Your dog tilts their head at you. You think it's adorable. Most people think it's confusion, but what if that head tilt is your dog's way of listening to something most humans will never hear? Something hidden in the tone of your voice that reveals whether you're about to reach for the leash or just talking to yourself. Subscribe to the channel because what you're about to learn will transform every conversation you have with your dog. Number 1. The acoustic engineering of a head tilt. When your dog cocks their head to one side while you're speaking, they're not confused. They're calibrating. Studies from behavioral acoustics research show that the shape of a dog's external ear, the pinna, creates directional interference patterns that can make it difficult to pinpoint the vertical location of sounds. That head tilt is your dog physically adjusting the angle of their ear flaps to triangulate exactly where your voice is coming from in three-dimensional space. Watch closely the next time you speak to your dog from across the room. They tilt their head, hold it there for a beat, and their eyes lock onto yours with sudden precision. That's the moment they've solved the acoustic puzzle. But here's where it gets more interesting. Research published in animal cognition journals reveals that dogs tilt their heads more frequently when hearing specific types of sounds, high-pitched voices, familiar words they've learned, and most significantly, when they detect emotional inflection they recognize. Your dog isn't just locating your voice. They're filtering it for meaning, scanning for the words and tones that have preceded something important in the past. The tilt is the visible moment of that internal processing, the physical manifestation of your dog asking themselves whether what you just said matters enough to act on. Number 2. The muzzle problem and visual detective work. There's a mechanical problem your dog faces that you don't. Their muzzle blocks their view. Depending on breed, that furry protrusion extending from their face can obscure a significant portion of their lower visual field, particularly the area where your mouth sits when you're speaking. Behavioral scientists studying canine perception have documented that dogs with longer muzzles, like collies or greyhounds, tilt their heads more frequently than brachycephalic breeds with flat faces. This isn't coincidence. When your dog tilts their head while you talk, they're literally moving their muzzle out of the way so they can see your mouth. Studies show that dogs read human facial expressions with remarkable sophistication, focusing particularly on the mouth and eye regions to gauge emotion and intention. Your dog has learned that your mouth movements correlate with specific sounds and outcomes. The shape your lips make when you say walk differs from sit or treat. By tilting their head, your dog gains an unobstructed view of these visual cues, allowing them to cross-reference what they're hearing with what they're seeing. This is multisensory communication at its finest. Your dog is using both auditory and visual channels simultaneously to decode your message. The next time your dog tilts their head during conversation, realize you're watching them actively work to understand you better, removing physical obstacles to perceive more of your communication. Number 3. The vocabulary connection that changes everything. Researchers at Utrecht University discovered something that fundamentally shifts our understanding of the head tilt. They studied dogs learning object names and found that the dogs who became exceptional at word learning, the ones who could ultimately recognize dozens or even hundreds of specific toy names, tilted their heads significantly more often than dogs who struggled with vocabulary acquisition. This wasn't just correlation. The frequency of head tilting during training sessions predicted which dogs would excel at language tasks. What this reveals is profound. The head tilt isn't a response to confusion. It's a marker of cognitive engagement. When your dog tilts their head, they're not lost. They're concentrating. They're activating the same neural pathways they use when processing and storing new words. Think about what happens when you say your dog's favorite toy name or a word they've been trained to recognize. That immediate head tilt appears because your dog is retrieving stored information, matching the sound pattern they just heard against their internal vocabulary database. Behavioral scientists describe this as working memory activation. Your dog is literally thinking. The tilt is thought made visible. Every time you see it, you're witnessing your dog's brain sorting through linguistic categories, trying to predict what comes next based on words they know. This is why dogs tilt their heads more with their owners than with strangers. You've given them more vocabulary to work with, more pattern recognition to perform. Number 4. Emotional resonance and the trust signal. Your dog tilts their head when you use a specific tone, the one that goes slightly higher and softer, the voice you reserve for them alone. Research in canine emotional processing shows that dogs possess specialized neural pathways for processing human vocal emotions, separate from the pathways they use for other dogs. When you speak to your dog in that particular register, You're activating brain regions associated with social bonding and reward anticipation. The head tilt that follows is your dog's physiological response to emotional salience. They tilt when something you've said carries emotional weight they recognize, when your tone matches previous moments that led to positive outcomes or deeper connection. Studies measuring oxytocin levels in dogs during human interaction found spikes when humans spoke in affectionate, high-pitched tones, the same kind of speech that most reliably produces head tilts. The tilt itself may reinforce this bonding loop. Research suggests that when dogs display behaviors humans find endearing, like head tilting, our own oxytocin levels increase, creating a reciprocal emotional feedback system. Your dog has learned, perhaps unconsciously, that the head tilt produces a response from you. You smile, your voice gets warmer, you lean closer. In this way, the head tilt becomes not just a tool for better understanding you, but a social behavior that strengthens the bond itself. When your dog tilts their head, they're not passively receiving your message. They're actively participating in the creation of a moment of connection. Number 5. The prediction machine in action. Your dog's brain is constantly running probability calculations. Neuroscience research shows that canine cognition operates largely on predictive processing, where the brain generates expectations about what's likely to happen next based on past patterns, then updates those predictions when new information arrives. The head tilt is what happens when your dog's prediction encounters uncertainty. You say something in a familiar tone, but the context is unusual. You use a word they know, but the surrounding words are new. You display facial expressions that don't quite match your voice. In these moments of prediction error, your dog tilts their head, a physical reset that allows them to gather additional data. Behavioral studies using novel situations consistently show increased head tilting when dogs face scenarios that are almost, but not quite, like something they've experienced before. This is why your dog might tilt their head when you talk on the phone. They hear your voice, recognize your emotional patterns, but cannot locate another person in the room, cannot see the mouth movements that should accompany your speech. The prediction model breaks down. The head tilt is your dog's attempt to resolve the mismatch between what they expect and what they observe. What's remarkable is that this uncertainty response only occurs in contexts where your dog cares about the outcome. Situations involving you, their social group, or opportunities they value. Your dog doesn't tilt their head at random sounds. They tilt at sounds that matter. At moments when getting the prediction right has consequences for connection, reward, or safety. Number 6. What this means for every conversation you have. When you understand that the head tilt represents your dog's active effort to understand you more completely, every interaction shifts. That moment when your dog's head cocks to the side isn't a cute quirk. It's an invitation. Your dog is signaling that they're engaged, processing, trying to bridge the communication gap between species. Research in human-dog communication emphasizes that successful interaction depends on bidirectional effort, both parties working to understand and be understood. When your dog tilts their head, they're holding up their end of this contract. They're using every tool available to them, adjusting their hearing, clearing their visual field, activating language centers, retrieving memories, reading your emotions, updating their predictions about what happens next. The question becomes what you do in response. Studies show that dogs whose owners respond to engagement signals with clearer communication, consistent word use, and matched emotional tone develop stronger vocabulary retention and more sophisticated understanding of human cues. The next time your dog tilts their head during conversation, slow down. Use the words you know they've learned. Let your facial expression match your tone. Give them an extra second to process. You're not dumbing things down. You're meeting them in the middle of the communication bridge they're actively building toward you. This is how the bond deepens. Not through what you say, but through the mutual recognition that both of you are trying to understand. Every head tilt your dog makes is a small act of devotion. They're working to understand you in a way that requires them to overcome biological limitations, to process a communication system that isn't natural to their species, to care enough about what you're saying that they'll physically reorient themselves to catch every nuance. When your dog tilts their head, they're not being adorable for your benefit. They're showing you what love looks like when it doesn't speak the same language. They're choosing, in that moment, to close the gap between your worlds. Share this video with someone who needs to see their dog's head tilt differently. Subscribe to the channel, because understanding what your dog is really telling you is what we're all about here. And the next time your dog tilts their head at you, remember you're looking at someone who's trying their absolute hardest to hear not just your words, but everything beneath them.